Hi everyone! Welcome back to Goodnight Stories. My name is Lyra, and I will be your guide into whatever book we decide to read tonight. From young readers to young adult novels, my hope is to give you a comfortable space to listen to a story. So, sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea. Tonight we start Aaron Hunter's Dawn, the third book in the New Prophecy series of Warriors. Prologue. Stars glittered coldly on a forest stripped bare by a bitter leaf fall. Shadows moved through the undergrowth, thin shapes, fur flattened by the chilly evening dew, slipping between the stems like water through reeds. The cat's pelts did not ripple with muscle as they once had. Instead, their fur clung to the bones beneath their thin frames. The flame-colored Tom, leading the silent procession, lifted his head and tasted the air. Even though nightfall had silenced the two-legged monsters, their stench clung to every dying leaf and branch. The cat took comfort from the scent of his mate beside him. Her familiar scent mingled with the hateful two-leg odor, and softened its cruel tang. She matched his pace stubbornly, even though her faltering stride betrayed her long, empty belly in wakeful nights. "Firestar," she panted, as they padded onward. "Do you think our daughters will find us when they come home?" The flame-colored cat flinched as though he had trodden on a thorn. "We can only pray that they will, Sandstorm," he said softly. "But how will they know where to look?" Sandstorm glanced back to a broad-shouldered gray Tom. "Graystripe, do you think they'll know where we've gone?" "Oh, they'll find us," Graystripe promised. "How can we be so sure?" growled Firestar. "We should have sent another patrol to search for Leafpaw." "And risk losing more cats?" Graystripe meowed. Firestar's eyes clouded with pain, and he hurried ahead along the shadowy path. Sandstorm twitched her tail. "This was the hardest decision he's ever had to make," she whispered to Graystripe. "He had to put the clan first," Graystripe hissed back. Sandstorm closed her eyes for a moment. "We've lost so many cats this past moon," she mewed. The wind must have carried her voice, because Firestar turned his head, his gaze hardening. "Then perhaps at this gathering, the other clans will finally agree that we must join together to face this threat," he growled. "Join together," a defiant mew sounded from a tabby Tom. "Have you forgotten how the clan reacted last time you said that? Wind Clan was half-starved, but you might as well have suggested they eat their kids. They're too proud to admit they need help from any cat." "Things are even worse now, Dustpelt," Sandstorm argued. "How can any clan stay strong when its kits are dying?" Her voice trailed away, and as she realized what she had said. "Dustpelt, I'm sorry," she murmured. "Larchkit may be dead," snarled Dustpelt, "but that doesn't mean I will let ThunderClan be ordered around by another clan." "No clan is going to give us orders," Firestar insisted. "But I still believe we can help each other. Leafbear is almost here. The two legs and their monsters have driven most of our prey farther and farther away, and they have poisoned what remains so that it's not safe to eat. We cannot fight alone." Suddenly the whispering of the wind through the branches grew to a roar, and Firestar slowed his steps, pricking his ears. "What is it?" Sandstorm whispered, her eyes stretched wide. "Something's happening at Four Trees," Graystripe yelled. He broke into a run, and Firestar rushed after him, closely followed by their clanmates. All the cats skidded to a halt at the top of a slope, looking down into a steep-sided hollow. Bright, unnatural lights, sharper than moonshine, blazed against the trunks of the 4 giant oaks that had guarded this sacred place since the time of the great clans. More lights shone from the eyes of huge monsters squatting at the edge of the clearing. The great rock, the vast, smooth, gray stone where clan leaders stood to address the clans gathering each full moon, looked small and exposed, like a kit crouched on a thunderpath. Two legs scurried around the hollow, shouting at one another. A new sound sliced through the air, a screeching high-pitched whine, and one two-leg raised a massive, shiny forepaw that flashed in the bright lights. The two-leg pushed it against the trunk of the nearest oak, and dust flew out from the tree like blood spraying from a wound. The shiny forepaw howled as it bit viciously into the ancient bark, pushing deeper into the tree's heart until the two-leg cried out a warning, and the hollow rang with a crack so loud that it drowned the rumbling monsters. The great oak began to lean over, slowly at first, then faster, faster, until it fell crashing to the ground. Its leafless branches clattered as they struck the cold earth, then stilled into deathly silence. StarClan stopped them, mewed Sandstorm. There was no sign that their warrior ancestors had seen what was happening at Four Trees. The stars glittering coldly in the indigo sky as the two-leg moved on to the next oak, his forepaw screaming for another kill. The cats watched in horror as the two-leg worked its way around the clearing until the last oak had been felled. Four Trees, the place where the four clans had met for many, many generations, was no more. The four giant oaks lay sprawled on the ground, their branches quivering into stillness. Two-legged monsters snarled at the edge of the clearing, ready to move in to carve up the fresh kill, but the cats stayed frozen at the top of the slope, unable to move. "The forest is dead," murmured Sandstorm. "There is no hope left for any of us." "Have courage." Firestar's eyes glittered as he turned to face his clan. "We still have our clan. There is always hope." Chapter 1. It was Crowpaw who scented the moorland first as the morning sun spread creamy light over the dew-soaked grass. Although he made no sound, Squirrelpaw saw his ears prick up and sensed him shaking. Sorry, there's a moth near me that is now flying into my face. My dear, go away. Squirrelpaw saw his ears prick up and sensed him shake off a little of the weariness he had struggled against since Feathertail's death. The dark gray WindClan cat quickened his pace, hurrying up the slope, where mist clung to the long grass. Squirrelpaw opened her mouth and drew in a deep breath until she too could taste the familiar scent of gorse and heather on the cold morning air. Then she dashed after him with Brambleclaw, Stormfur and Tawnypelt following fast behind. They could all smell the moorland scents now. They all knew they were close to the end of their long and exhausting journey. Without saying anything, the five cats stopped in a line at the edge of WindClan territory. Squirrelpaw glanced at her clanmate, Brambleclaw, and then at Tawnypelt, the ShadowClan she-cat. Beside her, Stormfur, the Grey RiverClan warrior, narrowed his eyes against the cold wind, but it was Crowpaw who stared most intensely at the rough grassland where he had been born. "We would have never come this far without Feathertail," he murmured. "She died to save us all," Stormfur agreed. Squirrelpaw winced at the raw sorrow in the RiverClan warrior's voice. Feathertail was Stormfur's sister. She had died saving them from a ferocious predator after they had met an unfamiliar group of cats in the mountains. The tribe of Rushing Water lived behind a waterfall and listened to their own set of ancestors, not StarClan, but the tribe of Endless Hunting. A mountain cat had been preying on the tribe for many moons, picking them off one by one. When it had invaded the tribe's cavern yet again, Feathertail had managed to dislodge a pointed spur of stone from the roof and send it crashing down to kill the beast. But she had been fatally wounded in the fall, and now she lay beneath rocks in the tribe's territory, close by the waterfall, with the sound of rushing water to guide her to StarClan. "It was her destiny," Tawnypelt commented gently. "Her destiny was to complete the quest with us," Crowpaw growled. "StarClan chose her to travel to the sun-drowned place and hear what Midnight had to tell us. She shouldn't have died for another clan's prophecy." Stormfur padded to Crowpaw's side and nudged the WindClan apprentice with his muzzle. "Bravery and sacrifice are part of the warrior code," he reminded him. "Would you have wanted her to make any other choice?" Crowpaw stared across the wind-ruffled gorse without replying. His ears twitched as if he were straining to hear Feathertail's voice on the breeze. "Come on!" Squirrelpaw bounded forward over the stunted grass, suddenly eager to finish the journey. She had argued with her father, Firestar, before she had left, and her paws pricked with nervousness as she wondered how he would react to her return. When she and Brambleclaw had left the forest, they had not told any of the clan where they were going, nor why. Only Leafpaw, Squirrelpaw's sister, knew that StarClan had spoken to one cat from each clan, telling them in dreams to go to the Sundrown place to hear Midnight's prophecy. None of them had guessed that Midnight would turn out to be a wise old badger, nor could they have imagined what momentous news she had to share with them. Crowpaw raced past her to take the lead, knowing the territory better than any of them. He headed toward a swath of gorse and disappeared along a rabbit track, with Tawnypelt close behind. Squirrelpaw ducked her head to avoid catching her ears on the prickers as she followed them along the narrow tunnel. Brambleclaw and Stormfur were hot on her heels. She could feel the thud of their paws through the soil. As the gorse closed around her, memories beat dark wings inside her head, reminding her of the dreams that had been disturbing her sleep. Dreams of darkness and of a small space filled with panic and fearsome. Squirrelpaw was sure these terrifying dreams were somehow connected to her sister. She told herself that now that she was home, she would be able to find out exactly where Leafpaw was. But feeling a fresh wave of alarm, she raced toward the light. She slowed down when she emerged into an open grassy space. Brambleclaw and Stormfur burst out after her, their fur raked by the sharp gorse spines. "I didn't know you were scared of the dark," teased Brambleclaw, falling in beside her. "I'm not," Squirrelpaw objected. "I've never seen you run so fast," he purred, his whiskers twitching. "I just want to get home," Squirrelpaw replied stubbornly. She ignored the glance Brambleclaw and Stormfur exchanged as they padded along beside her. The 3 cats were trailing behind Tawnypelt and Crowpaw, who had disappeared into a bank of heather. "What do you think Firestar will say when we tell him about Midnight?" Squirrelpaw wondered out loud. Brambleclaw's ears twitched. "Who knows?" "We're only the messengers," meowed Stormfur. "All we can do is tell our clans what StarClan wanted us to know." "Do you think they'll believe us?" Squirrelpaw asked. "If Midnight was right, I don't think we'll have much trouble convincing them," Stormfur pointed out grimly. Squirrelpaw realized that she had thought of nothing except returning home to her clan. She had pushed from her mind all thoughts of the threat that faced the forest, but her heart twisted with fear at Stormfur's words, and Midnight's terrifying warning echoed in her mind. "Two legs build new thunder path, soon they come with monsters. Trees will they uproot, rocks break, the earth itself tear apart. No place left for cats. You stay, monsters you too. Monsters tear you too, or you starve with no prey." Her stomach tightened with dread. What if they were too late? Would there even be a home to return to? She tried to calm herself by recalling the rest of Midnight's prophecy. "But you will not be without a guide. When returned, stand on great rock, when Silverpelt shines above. A dying warrior the way will show." Squirrelpaw breathed deeply. There was still hope. They had to get home. I smell Wind Clan warriors. Brambleclaw's yowl jerked Squirrelpaw back to the moorland. "We must catch up with Crowpaw and Tawnypelt." The impulse to face danger side by side with her traveling companions had become so instinctive that she had forgotten Crowpaw was actually Wind-clanned and would not be in any danger from his clanmates. She burst out of the heather into a clearing and nearly collided with the scrawny Wind-clan apprentice. She stopped dead and stared at him in surprise. The apprentice was a very young tabby, barely old enough to leave the nursery from the look of him. He was crouching in the center of the clearing with his back arched and his pelt bristling, even though he was outnumbered and outsized by Crowpaw and Tawnypelt. He flinched as Squirrelpaw hurtled out of the heather, but bravely stayed where he was. "I knew I smell intruders," he hissed. Squirrelpaw narrowed her eyes. Did a pathetic scrap like this really expect to take on three full-grown cats? Crowpaw and Tawnypelt looked calmly at the Wind-clan apprentice. "Owlkit?" Crowpaw meowed. "Don't you recognize me?" The apprentice tipped his head to one side and opened his mouth to scent the air. I'm Crowpaw. What are you doing out here, Owlkit? Shouldn't you be in the nursery? The young apprentice flicked his ears. I'm Owlpaw now, he snapped. But you can't be an apprentice, Crowpaw exclaimed. You're not 6 moons old yet. And you can't be Crowpaw, growled the tabby. Crowpaw ran away. But he loosened his battle-ready muscles and padded over to the WindClan cat, who stood calmly while the apprentice sniffed his flank. You smell strange, Owlpaw declared. We've traveled a long way, Crowpaw explained. But we're back now, and I need to speak with Tallstar. Who must speak with Tallstar? A belligerent meow made Squirrelpaw jump, and she turned to see a WindClan warrior pick his way out from the heather, lifting his paws high to avoid the thorns. 2 more warriors followed him. Squirrelpaw stared at them in alarm. They were so thin she could see the ribs beneath their fur. Hadn't these cats been catching any fresh kill recently? It's me, Crowpaw, meowed the WindClan apprentice, the tip of his tail twitching. Webfoot, don't you recognize me? Of course I do, meowed the warrior in a flat tone. He sounded so indifferent that Squirrelpaw felt a jab of pity for her friend. This was no sort of homecoming, and Crowpaw hadn't even given his clanmates the bad news yet. We thought you were dead, Webfoot meowed. Well, I'm not, Crowpaw blinked. Is the clan okay? Webpaw's eyes narrowed. What are these cats doing here? He demanded. They traveled with me, Crowpaw replied. I can't explain, but I will tell Tallstar everything, he added. Webfoot seemed uninterested in Crowpaw's words, and Squirrelpaw felt the scrawny warrior's gaze rake over her as he hissed, Get them off our territory, they should not be here. Squirrelpaw couldn't help thinking Webfoot was in no state to drive them out if they refused to go, but Brambleclaw stepped forward and dipped his head to the WindClan warrior. Of course we'll leave, he meowed. We have to return to our clans anyway, Squirrelpaw added pointedly. Brambleclaw shot her a warning glance. Then hurry up, snapped Webfoot. He looked at Crowpaw. Come on, he growled. I'll take you to Tallstar. He turned and began to head for the far side of the clearing. Crowpaw twitched his tail. Surely the camp is that way, he meowed, signaling toward the other direction. We live in the old rabbit warrens now, Webfoot told him. Squirrelpaw saw confusion and anxiety flash in Crowpaw's eyes. The clan moved? For now, Webfoot answered. Crowpaw nodded, though his gaze was still filled with questions. Can I say goodbye to my friends? Friends? One of the other warriors spoke, a pale brown Tom. Do your loyalties lie with cats from other clans now? Of course not, Crowpaw insisted, but we have traveled together for more than a moon. The WindClan warriors glanced uncertainly at each other, but said nothing as Crowpaw walked over to Tawnypelt and touched her mottled flank with his nose. He brushed affectionately past Brambleclaw and Stormfur as he stretched his head to touch his muzzle against hers. Squirrelpaw was surprised by the warmth of his farewell. Crowpaw had found it hardest out of all of them to fit into the group, but after all they had been through together, even he felt the bond of friendship that connected all 5 cats. We must meet again soon, Brambleclaw murmured, his voice low. At the Great Rock, just as Midnight told us. We need to see the dying warrior so that we know what to do next. He flicked his tail. It might not be easy to convince our clans that Midnight is telling the truth. The leaders aren't going to want to hear that they must leave the forest. But if we've seen the dying warrior... Why don't we just bring our leaders with us? Squirrelpaw mewed. If they see the dying warrior too, they'll have to believe Midnight is right. I can't imagine Leopard Star agreeing to come, Stormfur warned. Nor Black Star, Tawnypelt agreed. It's not full moon, so there's no truce among the 4 clans. But it's so important, Squirrelpaw persisted. They must come. We can try, Brambleclaw decided. Squirrelpaw's right. This might be the best way to share the news. Okay, Crowpaw meowed. We'll meet at 4 Trees tomorrow night with or without our leaders. 4 Trees, Webfoot's growl made Squirrelpaw jump. The WindClan warrior had obviously overheard their conversation. She felt a stab of guilt, although she knew there was no disloyalty to their clans in what they were planning. Quite the opposite, in fact, but Webfoot seemed to have other fears on his mind. You can't meet at 4 Trees. There's There's nothing left of it, he spat. Squirrelpaw felt her blood chill. What do you mean? Tawny Pelt demanded. All the clans watched the Two Legs destroy it 2 moons ago. 2 moon rises ago. When we arrived for the gathering, the Two Legs and their monsters cut down every one of the oaks. They cut down the oaks, Squirrelpaw echoed. That's what I said, growled Webfoot. If you're mouse-brained enough to go there, you'll see for yourself. Squirrelpaw's fierce desire to return home, to see her clan and father and mother and sister, washed over her again like a wave. And her paws twitched with the urge to run back to the forest. The others seemed to share her feeling. Brambleclaw's gaze hardened, and Stormfur kneaded the ground impatiently with his paws. Crowpaw glanced at his clanmates, and then back at his friends. Good luck, he meowed quietly. I still think we should meet there tomorrow night, even if the oaks have gone. When Brambleclaw and Stormfur nodded, he turned and followed Webfoot into the heather. As the WindClan cats disappeared from sight, Brambleclaw scented the air. Let's go, he ordered. We're heading over the old badger set toward the river, Tawny Pelt, but I think you should stay with us until we reach the WindClan border. But it would be quicker if I head straight toward the Thunderpath, Tawny Pelt argued. It will be safer if we keep together till we're off the moorland, Stormfur meowed. You don't want to be caught alone on WindClan territory. I'm not scared of WindClan, Tawny Pelt hissed. Judging by those warriors, they're hardly battle-fit. We mustn't do anything to provoke them, Brambleclaw warned. No cat knows where we've been or what we have to tell them. And we don't know what the Two Legs have done here, Stormfur added. If we run into any of their monsters, we'll be better off together. Tawny Pelt gazed intently at her companions for a moment, then nodded. Squirrelpaw blinked with relief. She did not want to say goodbye to another friend just yet. Brambleclaw charged away over the moor, and the 3 other cats followed close behind. As they raced across the grass, the weak leaf-fall sunrise scarcely warmed the fur on Squirrelpaw's back. They ran in silence, and she felt their mood darken as though a cloud had covered the sky. Ever since leaving the mountains, they had concentrated on nothing but reaching the forest, all equally desperate to return home. Squirrelpaw was beginning to think it might have been easier to keep traveling, to journey forever through unfamiliar territory, rather than face the responsibility of having to tell the clans that they would have to leave their homes or else face a terrible death. But there was still the sign of the dying warrior to come. They had to see this through. The reek of two-legged monsters stung her nostrils as they approached the border. There was no sign of any prey, no birds in the sky, and no scent of rabbits among the gorse. WindClan had never been an easy territory to hunt in, but there had always been traces of prey on the breeze or in the sandy soil. Even buzzards, which often hovered over the wide stretch of moorland, were gone. The 4 cats reached the crest of a rise, and Squirrelpaw swallowed hard, fighting the urge to retch as the tang of monsters grew stronger. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to look down the slope. A whole slice of land had been carved out of the moorland, brown and gray and broken, instead of the smooth green expanse that had been there when the cats began their journey. In the distance, two-legged monsters growled across the ground, chewing the earth with their heavy paws to leave a trail of useless mud. Trembling, Squirrelpaw whispered, "No wonder WindClan moved to the rabbit warrens. The Two Legs must have destroyed their camp." "They've destroyed everything," Brambleclaw breathed. "Let's get out of here," Tawny Pelt hissed. Squirrelpaw heard anger in her voice, and saw her long, hooked claws sink into the grass. Brambleclaw continued to stare at the ravaged landscape. "I can't believe how much they've destroyed." Squirrelpaw's throat tightened. Seeing Brambleclaw's misery was almost as bad as looking at the ruined moor. "Come on," she urged. "We have to get home and find out what has happened to our clans." He nodded. Squirrelpaw saw him brace his shoulders as if he were literally carrying the weight of the message they had to take to their clans. Without saying anything else, he headed down the slope, keeping well away from the two-legged monsters, and toward the cat. And together the cats picked their way across the swath of churned-up ground. Squirrelpaw was grateful for the cold night that had set the mud hard. If it rained, this would turn into a clogging brown river, enough to swallow kits and suck at the bellies of the longest-legged warriors. When they reached the WindClan border, where the land swept down to the forest, Tawny Pelt paused. "I'll leave you here," she meowed. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her sadness. "We'll meet at Four Trees tomorrow, whatever the two legs have done," she promised. Good luck with Blackstar," Brambleclaw meowed, rubbing his muzzle again along his sister's cheek. "I don't need luck," she replied grimly. "We'll do whatever it takes to persuade Blackstar to come with me. Our quest isn't over yet. We have to keep going for the sake of our clans." Squirrelpaw felt a renewed burst of energy as the tortoiseshell warrior pelted away toward the Shadow Clan border. "And we'll persuade Firestar," she called after her. The grass grew softer under their paws as Brambleclaw, Squirrelpaw, and Stormfur approached the RiverClan border. Soon, Squirrelpaw could scent the markers and hear the distant thundering of water in the gorge. RiverClan territory lay on the other side, and just beyond the gorge there was a two-leg bridge that would take Stormfur across the river to his camp. Brambleclaw paused as if he expected Stormfur to leave them here, but Stormfur just looked into his eyes. "I'm coming with you to the ThunderClan camp," he meowed quietly. "Coming with us? Why?" Squirrelpaw exclaimed. "I want to tell my father about Feathertail," he replied. But we can tell him, she offered, wanting to spare Stormfur the pain of telling Graystripe, the ThunderClan deputy, about his daughter's death. Graystripe had fallen in love with a RiverClan she-cat, Silverstream, many moons ago. She had died bearing his kits, and though Stormfur and Feathertail had grown up in RiverClan, they had always known their ThunderClan father. Stormfur shook his head. "He has already lost our mother," he reminded her. "I want to be the one to tell him about Feathertail." Brambleclaw nodded. "Then come with us," he meowed gently. In single file, the three cats followed the path away from the gorge and down into the trees. Squirrelpaw's fur prickled with anticipation as she breathed the musty smell of fallen leaves. They were nearly home. She quickened her pace until her paws were flying across the soft forest floor. She felt Brambleclaw's pelt brush against hers as he sped up to join her. But Squirrelpaw wasn't running from excitement or joy at being back in the forest. Something was calling her home. Something even more desperate than the threat of two legs and their monsters. The sinister dreams that had disturbed her sleep flooded her mind again and echoed in her heart like the warning cry of a hawk. Something was terribly wrong. Chapter 2. "Spotted Leaf?" Leafpaw called desperately into the forest. There was no reply. The wise medicine cat had guided her many times before in dreams. If ever Leafpaw had needed Spotted Leaf's help, it was now. "Spotted Leaf, where are you?" she called again. The trees did not even tremble in the breeze. No prey sound whispered in the shadows. The silence tore at Leafpaw's heart like a claw. Suddenly, an unfamiliar yowl echoed in her ears, forcing its way into her dream. Leafpaw opened her eyes with a jolt. For a moment, she couldn't think where she was. Her fur was ruffled by a cold draft, and instead of a soft, mossy nest, there was a strange, cold, shiny web beneath her paws. She stood up in panic, and more shiny web grazed her ears. Wherever she was, it was a very small space, hardly taller than she was. Taking a deep breath, Leafpaw forced herself to look around, and everything came rushing back to her. She was trapped in a tiny den, with walls, floor, and roof made entirely from cold, hard web. There was just enough space to stand and stretch, but no more. It was packed among other dens lining every wall of a small wooden two-legged nest. Leafpaw longed to see the stars, to breathe in the comforting presence of StarClan and know they were watching her. But when she looked up, she saw nothing but the nest's steeply pitched roof. The only light came from a shaft of moonlight that streamed through a small hole in the wall at one end of the nest. Her den was on top of others. The ones directly below were empty, but beneath that she could just make out a bundle of dark fur. Another cat? Not a forest cat, since its scent was unfamiliar. The shape was so still, it must have been sleeping. If it was alive at all, Leafpaw thought grimly. She listened again for the yowl, but the cat that had cried out was silent now, and Leafpaw could hear only the soft mewling and shuffling of cats trapped in other dens. She sniffed the air but recognized no scents. An acrid two-leg stench filled the nest, tinged with fear. Leafpaw unsheathed her claws, feeling them catch on the shiny web. StarClan, where are you? The thought fleetingly crossed her mind, that she was already dead, but she thrust it away with a shudder that made her claws scrape against the floor of the den. You're awake at last, whispered a voice. Leafpaw jumped and craned her neck to look over her shoulder. A heap of tabby fur stirred in the den beside her, and she smelled the unmistakable two-leg tainted scent of a kitty pet. There had been kindness in the she-cat's voice, but Leafpaw felt too wretched to reply. Her mind flooded with bitter memories of how the two legs had trapped her while she was hunting with Sorreltail and brought her to this awful place. She had been separated from her clan and locked in darkness. Overwhelmed by despair, she buried her nose in her paws and closed her eyes. Another voice sounded from a den farther along. It was too quiet to make out the words, but there was something familiar about it. Leafpaw lifted her muzzle to taste the air, but all she could smell was a sour tang that reminded her of the herbs Cinderpelt used for cleaning wounds. The voice spoke again, and Leafpaw strained her ears to listen. We must get out of here, the cat was mewing. Another cat answered from the far side of the nest. How? There's no way out. We can't just sit here waiting to die, the first voice insisted. There have been other cats here. I can smell them, and their fear scent. I don't know what happened to them, but whatever it was must have scared their fur off. We've got to get out before we become nothing but stale fear scent. There's no way out, you mouse brain, came a rough mew. Shut up and let us sleep. The words made Leafpaw feel sick with fear and sadness. She didn't want to die here. She flattened her ears and closed her eyes, clawing for the safety of sleep. Wake up, a voice hissed in Leafpaw's ear, jolting her out of troubled dreams. She lifted her head and looked around. Watery sunlight filtered in through the hole in the wall. Though it did nothing to lift the chill from her fur, in the weak dawn light she could see the tabby she-cat in the den next to her more clearly. The stranger was soft and well-groomed, and Leafpaw was conscious of her own matted pelt as she stared at her. She was definitely a kitty pet, plump and soft-muscled beneath her tabby pelt. Are you all right? Asked the kitty pet, her eyes wide with worry. You sounded as if you were in pain. I was dreaming, Leafpaw replied hoarsely. Her voice felt strange, as if she hadn't spoken for several days, and as she spoke, memories of her nightmare came flooding back. Images of water-swollen rivers, scarlet with blood, and great birds swooping out of the sky with thorn-sharp claws. For a heartbeat, Leafpaw saw Feathertail hidden in darkness, and then swathed in starlight, and without understanding why, her paws trembled. Outside, a two-legged monster roared into wakefulness, bringing her back to the wooden nest and the den that pressed around her. You don't look well, the kitty pet commented. Try eating some breakfast. There's some in the corner of your cage. Cage? Leafpaw wondered at the strange word. Is that what this den is called? The kitty pet was nodding through the web that separated the two cages, toward a half-empty holder of stinking pellets. Leafpaw looked at the two-legged food in disgust. I'm not eating that. Then at least sit up and give yourself a wash, the kitty pet urged. You've been hunched up like a wounded mouse since the work folk brought you here. Leafpaw twitched her shoulders, but didn't move. They didn't hurt you when they caught you, did they? The kitty pet asked. There was concern in her voice. No, Leafpaw mumbled. Then get up and wash yourself, she went on more briskly. You're no use to yourself or any cat moping around like that. Leafpaw did not want to get up and wash herself. The web floor scratched against her paws, and blood oozed from beneath one of her claws. Her eyes stung with the filthy air that filtered into the nest, fouled by the monsters outside, and StarClan had sent no comfort to ease the desperate fear that gripped her heart. Get up, repeated the kitty pet more firmly this time. Leafpaw twisted her head around to glare at her, but the kitty pet held her gaze. We're going to find some way to escape, she mewed. Unless you get up, stretch your muscles, and have something to eat and drink, you're going to be left behind, and I'm not leaving any cat here if I can help it. Leafpaw blinked. Do you know a way out of here? Not yet, admitted the kitty pet, but you might be able to help me find one if you'd stop feeling sorry for yourself. Leafpaw knew she was right. She wouldn't solve anything by curling up and waiting to die. Besides, she wasn't ready to join StarClan. She was an apprentice medicine cat. Her clan needed her here in the forest, whatever was left of it. Pushing away the misery that had sapped her strength, she pulled herself up onto her paws. Her cramped muscles screamed in protest as she uncurled her tail and flexed her legs. That's better, purred the kitty pet. Now turn around. There's more room to stretch if you face the other way. Leafpaw obediently wriggled around and reached her paws to the corner of the cage, gripping the web to brace herself. As she stretched, pressing her chest down and flexing her shoulders, she felt her stiff muscles soften. Feeling a little better, she began to wash herself, swiping her tongue over her flank. The kitty pet huddled closer to the mesh and watched her with bright blue eyes. I'm Cody, she meowed. What are you called? Leafpaw. Leafpaw, echoed Cody. What an odd name, she shrugged and carried on. Well, bad luck on getting caught, Leafpaw. Did you lose your collar, too? I wouldn't be here if I hadn't pulled mine off. The wretched thing. I thought I was so clever managing to wriggle out of it, but if I'd still been wearing it, the workfolk would have taken me home instead of bringing me here. She tucked in her chin and licked an unkempt clump of fur on her chest. My housefolk are going to be mad with worry. If I'm not in by midnight, they start rushing around the garden shaking the pellet pot and calling for me. It's nice that they care, but I can look after myself. Leafpaw couldn't help letting out a purr of amusement. The kitty pet look after itself. If it weren't for the food the two legs give you, you'd starve. Two legs? Sorry, Leafpaw corrected herself for the kitty pet's benefit. Housefolk. Well, where do you get your food from? Asked Cody. I hunt for it. I caught a mouse once, Cody meowed defensively. I catch all my food, Leafpaw retorted. For a moment she forgot she was trapped in a stifling cage and saw only the green forest rustling with the tiny sounds of prey. And I catch enough for the elders, too. Cody narrowed her blue eyes. Are you one of those woodland cats that Smudge talks about? I'm a clan cat, Leafpaw told her. Cody's gaze clouded with confusion. A clan cat? There are 4 clans in the forest, Leafpaw explained. We each have our own territory and customs, but we all live together under StarClan. She saw Cody's eyes stretch wide, and she went on. StarClan are our warrior ancestors. They live in Silverpelt. She flicked her tail toward the roof, indicating the sky. All clan cats will join StarClan one day. Smudge never mentioned any clans, murmured Cody. Who's Smudge? A cat from another garden. He had a friend a long time ago, a kitty pet who went off to join the woodland cats. Clans. My father was born a kitty pet, meowed Leafpaw. He left his 2 legs to join ThunderClan. Cody pressed herself against the shiny web that separated them. What's your father's name? Leafpaw stared back at her. Do you think he might be that cat your friend used to know? Cody nodded. Maybe. What's his name? Firestar. Cody shook her head. Smudge's friend was called Rusty, she sighed. Not Firestar. But he wasn't always Firestar, Leafpaw mewed. That's his clan name. It's a leader name. He has to earn it, just as he had to earn his warrior name. Cody glanced at her thoughtfully. Names are important to the clans, aren't they? Very. Each kit is given a name that means something, that recognizes the way it is different from all its clanmates. She paused. I guess you could say that we are given the name we deserve. What did your father do to deserve the name Firestar? His pelt is as orange as a flame, Leafpaw told her. So when he came to ThunderClan, the leader named him Fire. She broke off. Cody was staring at her in astonishment. It must be Smudge's friend, she gasped. Smudge always said Rusty had the brightest orange pelt he'd ever seen. And now he's the leader of your clan? Wow, I can't wait to tell Smudge. A pang of sorrow gripped Leafpaw's heart as she wondered if Cody would have another chance to speak to Smudge, or if she herself would ever see her father again. Oh, StarClan, help us. Cody glanced down at the floor as if she had followed Leafpaw's terrified thoughts. Your ears look like another wash wouldn't do any harm, she mewed, changing the subject. Leafpaw licked her paw and drew it over one ear as Cody continued. Your father must be wondering where you've gone. I bet he's as worried about you as my housefolk are about me. Yes, Leafpaw agreed, though privately she doubted that Two Legs had the same connection with their cats as she did with her kin. She reminded herself that Cody seemed devoted to her housefolk. She sounded as concerned about them as Leafpaw was about her clanmates. We must find a way out of here. Her voice hardened with determination. Firestar was already worried enough about Squirrelpaw without another daughter going missing. She stared at the hole high in the nest wall where the sunshine filtered in, and wondered if it was big enough for a cat to squeeze through. She might just manage it, even if she left some fur behind. But how could she escape from the cage? She studied the catch that held the door shut. It's no use, Cody mewed, following her gaze. I tried reaching my paw through, but I can't get a grip on the catch. Do you know why the Two Legs are trapping us like this? Leafpaw asked, dragging her eyes away from the door. Cody shrugged. I suppose they think we get in the way of what they're doing in the forest, she mewed. They caught me after I chased a squirrel into the woods, farther than I usually go. One of the monsters came roaring through the trees, and I panicked. I was so startled I didn't see the workfolk all around. One of them scooped me up and shoved me in here. Even without my collar, he must have been as stupid as a pup to mistake me for a forest cat. She bristled indignantly, then let her fur lie flat as she caught Leafpaw's eye. Sorry, I wasn't thinking. I mean, you're much nicer than I thought you'd be, she finished awkwardly. Leafpaw shrugged. Forest cat or kitty pet, they were equally trapped. I don't usually come to this part of the woods either, she mewed. I was looking for Cloudtail and Brightheart, two of my clanmates. Cody tipped her head to one side. They went missing not long ago, Leafpaw explained. Some of the clan thought they'd just run away, but I know they'd never leave their kit. So you decided the Two Legs must have caught them and came looking for them? Cody guessed. I didn't even know the Two Legs were trapping cats, Leafpaw mewed. I just followed a clue, and I came across the scent of a RiverClan cat who'd gone missing too. She paused, her fur prickling. If Cloudtail, Brightheart, and Mistyfoot had been trapped by the Two Legs, they could be here now. She stared frantically around the nest, brighter now as the morning light strengthened. Finally, she saw a shape she had hoped to find, the tortoiseshell splash fur familiar even in the gloom. Brightheart? Leafpaw tried to call her clanmate's name, but a new noise silenced her cry. The nest door opened, and light streamed in. Leafpaw quickly scanned the cages for more familiar shapes as the Two-Leg marched into the nest. The Two-Leg began opening each cage and tossing something inside. When it reached hers, Leafpaw jumped back. She watched, trembling in fear, as the Two-Leg dropped fresh pellets into the pot near the front and slopped stinking water into the holder beside it. But when the Two-Leg opened Cody's cage, the kitty pet brushed against its giant paw, purring as the Two-Leg stroked her soft fur. The Two-Leg shut Cody's door and left the nest. The cages were plunged once more into shadow. How could you let it touch you? Leafpaw hissed. The workfolk might be our best way out of here, Cody pointed out. If I can persuade it that I'm nothing but a poor lost kitty pet, it might let me go. You should try it too. Leafpaw shuddered at the idea of any Two-Leg touching her, and she knew her clanmates would feel the same. She tried to find the cage where she had recognized Brightheart's soft pelt. Brightheart, she called, her tail twitching anxiously. Yes? Came the worried reply. Who's that? Leafpaw pressed herself against the front of her cage, feeling the web hard and cold through her fur. It's Leafpaw. Leafpaw? The voice came from somewhere else in the nest, and Leafpaw let out a muffled purr as she recognized Cloudtail's familiar mew. She searched the cages until she saw his thick white pelt. You're both still alive! Leafpaw exclaimed. Are those the cats you were looking for? Cody asked. Leafpaw nodded. Leafpaw? Another voice came from the gloom. It's me, Mistyfoot. Mistyfoot, Leafpaw echoed. I thought I found your scent before I was trapped. What were you doing so far from the RiverClan border? I wouldn't have been caught in that fox-hearted Two-Leg trap if I hadn't been chasing a thieving WindClan warrior off my territory, growled the she-cat. A trembling meow sounded from below. I didn't know it was a trap when I hid in it. Who's that? Leafpaw asked, peering down. Gorse Tail of Wind Clan, came the reply. Are there any other clan cats here? Leafpaw called, only half hoping for a reply. However relieved she was to find that her clanmates and friends were still alive, she'd far rather no forest cats had been caught at all, herself included. But she heard only the steady crunching of pellets as the other trapped cats ate their food. There's about the same amount of rogues here as clan cats, Missyfoot hissed. What are rogues? Cody whispered in alarm. They're cats who choose not to belong to a clan, Leafpaw explained, or to Two Legs either. They care only about themselves, Missyfoot added. Yeah, well, look where caring about your clanmates got you, muttered a reproachful voice near the floor of the nest. Leafpaw strained her eyes and saw scraggly old Tom with ripped ears crouching in a cage on the floor. Ignore him, spat Cody. He'll be no help. Do you know him? Do you know him? Leafpaw asked in surprise. He used to steal from my housefolks' garbage, Cody explained. He may call himself a rogue or whatever, but he's no better than a rat if you ask me. You live in Two Leg Place, Cloudtail called to Cody. Do you know a cat called Princess? A tabby with white paws. Yes, Cloudtail's eyes shone in the gloom. She's my mother. How is she? She's great, Cody answered. A dog came to live in the next house, a yappy thing, but Princess soon let him know it was her territory. She sat on the fence and hissed at him till he went running for cover. Look, Missyfoot snapped. This is all very heartwarming, but can we figure out a way to escape? Does any cat know what the Two Legs are planning to do with us? Brightheart's voice was hoarse with terror. What do you think they're going to do with us? Muttered the rogue Tom. They didn't catch us and lock us up in the stinking hut because they're fond of cats. At least they're feeding us, Cody mewed quickly. Even if it's not quite as tasty as I'm used to. Leafpaw glanced at her. Let's concentrate on finding a way out of here, like Missyfoot suggested, she mewed. Why don't you all just shut up, hissed the rogue. You'll bring the Two Leg back with all your mewling. As he spoke, the noise of heavy footsteps sounded outside, and Leafpaw froze. She pressed herself to the back of her cage as the Two Leg came in with another cage. Leafpaw could tell by the fear scent that a she-cat crouched inside, but she didn't recognize its smell. With a guilty pang of relief, she knew that the latest victim of the Two Leg traps was definitely not a clan cat. Another rogue, she decided as the Two Leg placed the cage on top of Cloudtail's, and judging by the other rogue in here, she won't be much help with planning a way. The other rogues in here, she won't be much help with planning a way to get out. But as soon as the Two Leg left the nest, she heard Missyfoot exclaim in astonishment, Sasha? And that's where we'll leave it. I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and I hope you have a good evening and a good night. Till next time, my friends.